Everyone thought he had failed. For 5 years, he worked every single day without seeing a single result. No progress, no reward, no proof that anything was working. People laughed at him. They told him to stop. They said he was wasting his life. And if you had seen him back then, you probably would have agreed with them, because every morning, without exception, he walked to the same piece of land and watered nothing, just dry, empty soil. But what nobody understood was that the most important part of his work was happening somewhere they couldn't see. In a small village, surrounded by hills and quiet farmland, there lived a man named Daniel. He lived a simple life. No wealth, no recognition, no great achievements. Just routine. Daniel woke up early every morning, long before the rest of the village had even opened their eyes. He would step outside his small wooden house, take a deep breath of the cold morning air, and walk down a narrow dirt path that led to his land. It wasn't much, just a modest piece of dry ground on the edge of the village, the kind of land most people would ignore. But to Daniel, it meant something, because years ago that land had been given to him by his father. His father had always told him, "This land will teach you patience." At the time, Daniel didn't understand, but he never forgot those words. On that land, Daniel had decided to grow bamboo. It seemed like a strange choice. Bamboo wasn't common in that region, and it wasn't easy to grow. But Daniel had read about it. He had learned that bamboo required something most people didn't have: patience. So he planted the seeds, and from that day forward, he committed to a simple routine. Every morning, he watered the soil, carefully, consistently, without fail. At first, people were curious. They would stop and watch him. "What are you growing?" they asked. "Bamboo," Daniel replied calmly. Some of them nodded politely. Others looked confused. But as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, nothing appeared. No sprouts, no signs of life, just the same dry ground. People began to question him. "Are you sure it's working? Maybe the seeds are dead. Maybe you should try something else." Daniel would simply smile and continue. After the first year, the curiosity turned into doubt. After the second year, doubt turned into ridicule. By the third year, people had started laughing. "Look, it's the man who waters dirt." Children would point at him. Adults would shake their heads. Even those who once supported him began to lose faith. "Daniel," one neighbor said, "you've spent years on this. Don't you think it's time to stop?" But Daniel didn't stop. Not once. Even on the days when the weather was harsh, when the wind was cold, when the rain soaked through his clothes, he still showed up. He still watered the soil, day after day, week after week, year after year. By the fourth year, something changed. Not in the soil, but in the people. They stopped watching, stopped asking, stopped caring. Daniel had become invisible. To them, he was no longer a man chasing a dream. He was just a man stuck in a pointless routine. But even Daniel was not immune to doubt. Late at night, sitting alone in his house, he would sometimes ask himself, "What if they're right? What if nothing ever grows? What if I've wasted all these years for nothing?" Those thoughts were quiet, but persistent. They didn't scream, they whispered. And sometimes those whispers felt louder than anything else. But every time doubt appeared, Daniel remembered his father's words, "This land will teach you patience." And the next morning, he would wake up, put on his boots, and walk back to the land. Then, one morning, everything changed. It was early. The air was still. The village was quiet. Daniel arrived at his land, as he always did. But something felt different. He couldn't explain it. He just felt it. He stepped closer to the soil and saw it. A tiny crack. He knelt down, looked closer, And there it was, a small, fragile green shoot breaking through the earth. After 5 years, something had finally appeared. From that moment on, growth became visible. At first it was slow, but then it accelerated. Day by day, the bamboo grew taller. Week by week, it became stronger. People began to notice. The same people who had laughed were now watching, silently. Within a few weeks, the bamboo reached Daniel's waist, then his shoulders, then above his head. Within a few months, it towered over the land, stronger than anything around it. The villagers gathered, confused, amazed. "How did this happen?" they asked. "How did it grow so fast?" Daniel looked at them calmly. "It didn't grow in a few months," he said. "It was growing for 5 years. They frowned, but we didn't see anything." Daniel nodded. "Exactly. While you were watching the surface, you thought nothing was happening. But underneath, everything was happening. The roots were growing. Stronger, deeper, more stable. And if it had grown earlier, before those roots were ready, it would have fallen." Some of the most important growth in your life happens where no one can see it.